Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I always said that, and I'm leading my life under the principle that truth is truth regardless who says it, and knowledge is knowledge regardless who provides you with knowledge. In this case, I don't have to, I will use the Chinese government to tell the truth. And why I'm saying that? Because there's no other country who says it so plainly and directly. And if there is another country, we don't hear about it here because of the freedom of speech that we all enjoy. So this comes from a video from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China, from China, and this comes from. I will upload the link below of the video so you can access it and see it, watch it if you want. And it's China calling out NATO's atrocities and continuous violation of international law. I think we're all aware of that, but I have to reiterate that this for people who are not certain or have doubts. And I have a lot of people telling me that NATO is a defensive organization, alliance, which is not. It's like the Ministry of Truth and Minister of War. Peace is of Peace, Ministry of Peace, which is actually the Ministry of War, and Ministry of Truth, which actually is Ministry of censorship and limiting free speech. So the same thing with this thing with defensive, but it's offensive. How is that? Well, sometimes you have to do preemptive strike. That's true, but you're gonna hear what the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs says, and maybe that's gonna exemplify or ring a bell here and there. So I'm just gonna read. The Chinese people will never forget such barbaric atrocities committed by NATO. And it says here, and will never allow the historical tragedy to be repeated. Never allow. What does that mean? So that means that they will never allow NATO to invade another country. Well, what's happening in Ukraine? It's almost there. The only thing is missing is NATO troops, which would be American, British, and possibly French troops, and Australian, Canadian. Okay, I'll put those in too. With a weapon in their hands, grenade launchers or grenades, and or driving tanks or flying airplanes in Ukraine. That's all what's missing over there. Everything else, providing intelligence, providing ammunition, providing training, all that is there. So I would say they're already involved in a big percentage. Let's put it this way. So they will not. The Chinese said they will not never allow the historical tragedy to be repeated. NATO claims to be a defensive organization. Yeah, that's what they say. But in fact, it has repeatedly violated international law and wantonly waged war against sovereign states. True, not true? Undermining global and regional peace and killing and displacing a large number of innocent civilians. Innocent civilians, take the example of Yugoslavia, illegal bombing with the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. They will never forget that, and they said it in another communique. It says, in its blind pursuit of, he says, absolute security, NATO engaged in 5 consecutive waves of eastward expansion. It's talking about Europe, obviously, after the end of the Cold War, and it's still a defensive. Against whom, I'm wondering. Everybody's like, oh, Russia. Which did not make Europe safer. So this expansion eastward did not make Europe safer, but rather sowed the seed of conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So he blames actually the expansion of NATO, which is the same thing what the Russians did. reigniting conflict on the European continent. So let's do this in one breath. In its blind pursuit of absolute security, NATO engaged in 5 consecutive waves of eastward expansion after the end of the Cold War, which did not make Europe safer but rather sowed the seed of conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And it's a reigniting conflict on the European continent. Reigniting conflict, yes. That's one thing coming from the Chinese government. Well, people say, oh, Chinese, they are this or that. Is that a fact? Yeah. I don't care if it comes from the devil. Who cares? Oh, devil is deceiving. Is that a fact? What did this guy said? It is. And now we have another report. You know, I spoke about the Solomon Islands and the Chinese treaties, economic treaties, and allowing the Chinese to come and help with order and discipline in the country, I guess, with police, or allowing the Chinese maybe military vessels to use Solomon Islands ports. Well, Solomon Islands, for people who might not be familiar with that, they're a little bit north of Australia. And Australia said that's a red line if Chinese warships are going to be docked at in Solomon Islands. Now the Americans, again, that treaty undermines the security, blah blah blah, and we need security guarantees and peace and love. But the United States is 4,000 miles over the Atlantic or something, Atlantic Pacific, from Australia, from Solomon Islands. But nevertheless, and then New Zealand jumped in the frenzy, and everybody's upset about this because they don't have security guarantees. Like Russia asked for security guarantees, and everybody was like, "What are you talking about? We're going to expand this port anyway." So you see, these guys were angry with a treaty between two sovereign countries, you know. But they're very angry and so on. And then the United States wants to reopen its embassy, which was closed in 1993 in Solomon Islands, you know, to bring some personnel over there that will help with spreading the culture of the United States. And then the Prime Minister of Solomon Islands stated that they are threatened with invasion by obvious free countries surrounding them and some far away. And then Australian Prime Minister said, no, we want calm. What calm? You draw a red line if you see those docking over there in a sovereign country. What's your problem? Oh, we can't. What about Ukraine and Russia? But nevertheless, I'm not going to talk about this right now. I'm talking about the Japan and UK agreed on defense pact amid China rise in Indo-Pacific. So this comes from South China Morning Post from May 6, 2022. And this is the title: Japan and UK agree on defense pact amid China's rise in Indo-Pacific. So they're trying to contain that. Japanese Prime Minister, who was a very, very, very busy bee in the past 2 months, very busy bee, and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson agreed in principle Thursday on a defense cooperation pact as part of their efforts to realize a free and open, this is double speak, a free and open Indo-Pacific in a veiled counter to an increasing assertive China. It's a free and open, but our openness, our free, oh my God, yes. The reciprocal access agreement was signed would enable faster deployment of their troops. That's free, right? And allow them to engage in joint training and disaster relief efforts. Japan recently signed a similar RAA with Australia. So now they talk about they have the Prime Minister of Japan highly appreciated Britain's increased involvement in the Indo-Pacific region, and the two leaders expressed strong concern about unilateral attempts to change the status quo, their status quo that they like, in the East and South China Seas, and rapid but not transparent military buildup and activities, the Japanese government said. Well, their status quo. Did anybody ask China about if they're okay with that? or they should not be us, like Russia. You just mind your own business over there. Just let us deal with NATO here. Um, then I said here that the two leaders agreed to resolutely counter such unilateral attempts or economic coercion. The government said that without signaling out China, the world's second largest economy, that has been attempting to expand its sphere of influence with its military and economic clout. Isn't that called free market? Is that capitalism? Oh, you do the same thing like you did, the United States did with Japan before the Second World War, contained Japan and say you can't do business with this, you can do business there, you can do this is our somehow neighborhood, Indochina in that area. And the Japan said, yeah, okay, yeah, why don't you take a Pearl Harbor here? Boom. So we're going to be the repeating with the same historical event with different um, actors. It says Ukraine may be tomorrow's East Asia. Yeah, and you're pushing for it. I can see that. But nevertheless, they are the victims now. They have a status quo, and they talk about the international order encompassing the Indo-Pacific is at stake. Why? Because the free sovereign countries' decisions to have a cooperation, and oh my, it's just so hypocritical. So these guys are making a pact because China assertive economic clout over other countries, like investing. Why you can't invest anymore? Only you can invest. I can invest. Yeah, basically that's what it is. And then the Solomon Islands. Oh my God, you can't have a navy, ship docked in Solomon Islands. It's my security. What about NATO being in Romania and Poland? And Ukraine next, right, by Russia. And Russia said, that's a red line. We don't care. Status quo, your status quo. It's true. It's threatened your status quo. That's what happens right now in Europe and in East Asia. Just wait for it. Just wait for it. Do you think that people are really stupid? They don't follow those orders anymore because they're economically and militarily strong. Well, thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just. See ya.